What a time to be a Marvel fan as well. And I don't necessarily mean that in a positive way, because this week we had an article written by Rafa Alvarez for Variety about the some of the issues that Marvel Studios are dealing with right now. And we've kind of touched on them, but in a very speculative way, in that this must be awkward or this must be causing problems. And he's basically confirmed that everything we're discussing and everything we're kind of speculating on, yes, it's happening. It is as bad as you can imagine. If you haven't read it, I have linked to it. We had Adam, Clueless Nerd, loyal listener, all the way back to the Low Blows days as well, sent in a link to us asking if we were going to discuss it. So you'll be able to get that off my feed if you want. But basically, some of the highlights that you got in there is that Jonathan Major's ongoing trial is leaving them looking at kind of pivoting on the next few years' roadmap. They're looking at maybe switching to Doctor Doom, which we've discussed previously. But Loki. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. You got
this week. You heard it first, ladies and gentlemen.
You got the exclusive on page 180, courtesy of Dan. There you go. But as well, like kind of stuff that they kind of hinted towards how Loki pans out may end up just committing them even further on this path, which isn't ideal. The Marvels obviously coming out next week, and we're looking forward to it. But again, maybe we shouldn't, because apparently it's been plagued by reshoots. You had stuff like director Nia DaCosta left to work on another movie during post-production, which is, again, not what you do when you're working on a $500,000 budget blockbuster. You have the Marvel VFX artists have been much maligned over the past while, deciding to unionize due to insane demands leading to criticism, which is just when you kind of look at what the norm is and what Marvel is asking of them since Disney Plus kicked in, and the demand for content has just skyrocketed. It's absolutely insane, and fair play to them for sticking together and kind of fighting back. You're talking budget issues as well, like apparently spending is out of control, and this is one thing that got me. A single episode of She-Hulk cost them $25 million, which is more than HBO spent on a final season episode of Game of Thrones. Like, that is fucking wild when you think of what HBO got when again, everyone's like the last season of Game of Thrones, but we all fucking watched it versus I liked She-Hulk, but it was a speck on the tip of the zeitgeist. There was nothing in comparison. There's talks of panicking and bringing back the likes of Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson, which, again, if it's done for the right reasons, we might get into it. But essentially, it's just because we're fucked, which, again, will probably mean that if it does happen, it might be a bit shit. Worrying times indeed. And it's just so happened to break in the middle of a series that we're rather enjoying. Dan, with all of this breaking, how are you feeling as a fan of Marvel Studios? How is this all kind of sitting with you? Again, a lot of it we've kind of discussed and speculated on, but this is just confirmation. So how's this sitting with you?
I mean, I would use what we've been doing the last couple of weeks as an example, because we've thrown out some really harebrained ideas as to what's going on, and the more all these shows and movies progress, the more they're staying insular. And the reason why we've been making these mad speculations is because we pretty much got that with the Infinity Saga. Every single piece of content they released, because they were not doing TV shows back then, it's a relatively new idea. And we were really getting rewarded as fans. And I've mentioned a few times now that I do feel like that they're using the C and D listers when it comes to some of this content. And they're sticking to the source material, but maybe that's not the way to do it. So we've made some mad predictions as to what's coming, but the reason why we're doing that is because that's what we had in the past. They're not really kind of indulging us as fans. So maybe it is time to, wipe off the whiteboard and start from scratch. And with these rumors that were coming out and some of speculations we made, especially over the John Major's situation, that they've been kind of handed a very a double-edged sword in this regard, because it's a horrible situation that it's in, and I know we're going to get into it, but it's looking more and more like that this is not going to go well for John Majors, and he looks very guilty at this stage. If you follow up with what's been said, what he said, vice versa. So maybe Marvel can take what they're doing now with Loki, being they've been handed at the right time this rule-changing, universe-changing mechanic, and if none of this stuff was to ever happen, the accusations that are coming out, and if they were to suddenly drop Jonathan Majors, the whole perspective would be different. But what they can do now is drop him, go in a different direction, reset the rules. Okay, they're going to be a lot of money, but they could really pull it back. We're talking comics. So, I mean, look at Tony Stark himself as a comics. Like, he's died so many goddamn times we've lost count. So bringing someone back is not going to be too much of a game changer for comic books. I mean, it looks like that's what we're going to be dealing with next week with the season finale of Loki. So as a fan, maybe things are going to start getting exciting. Is that wishful thinking? Probably. But as a fan and as someone who's been following this my whole life, who in many regards this has been my life, I'm still hopeful. And I think no matter what happens, no matter what piles of shit I'm being handed, I think I'll stay hopeful. So that is where I am right now.
I love it. I love it. And this is why I love these conversations. And we've spoken about it a couple of times. We were just speaking about it last week. The perpetual hope that fans of this kind of content like us have, that it'll all turn around and it'll all get good again. And again, it's not. I saw a really good take by Joanna Robinson on Twitter, who's someone whose podcasts I love. It's required listening if you like this kind of content as well. Her and Mallory Rubin on House of R. And again, if you're looking for context on all of this and behind the scenes stuff for Marvel, I'm currently reading her book, MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, which is just released in November. It's an excellent book and really takes you into this kind of stuff, if this is what kind of gets you. She made a really good point on Twitter, though, that again, some of the dumbest takes out there is that Marvel just fell into this success and it accidentally happened and they just came at the right time and the stuff probably wasn't that good, but it's overrated and it's just bad. And it's like, no,
they accidentally wrote the best movie of the last 10 years.
Yeah. It was like, no, this was by design. It worked. They're trying a lot. It's ambitious. They may be trying too much, but I also understand that as a fan, and people are Marvel super fans at this stage, and there's different degrees of that. There's people who are into the comics like yourself, and like I dip into them as well. But then you have people who are like, just into the TV shows and movies, and that's fine. But this can be disheartening and disappointing as a fan. And what I'd say is, if you're worried about Marvel off the back of this Variety article, I'll kind of pass on a lesson that I've learned from being a wrestling fan in recent years. The antidote for disappointment, if something you love, as we do Marvel, is exposure to alternatives. And I'll give you, again, a wrestling example. We'll set it there. WWE is actually in a really good place right now from a product and business standpoint, but in our very recent memories, it was almost depressingly bad to see how poor the content, something we loved since our childhood, had gotten. And again, how depressing it was to watch it every single week. And that's kind of how some people may be feeling about some Marvel content now. But when you're a fan and you stick on then the likes of AEW or New Japan, or you go to your local indie show, like I'm going to Fight Factory next week. And again, I love going to those shows. And you see them knocking it out of the park, it feels less like you're losing something you love. So sometimes when something you like so much starts to go the wrong way, you can almost start grieving it as if this is the end of your fandom. But then you're like, no, actually, there's loads of stuff out there. And just listen to how we started the pod talking about how there's so much amazing content out there at the moment. So like in the case of Marvel, in the case of this kind of content, later on today, we're going to discuss Gen V, a spinoff from The Boys, which is a franchise that is absolutely on fire right now. Invincible, like we said, just came back for its second season on Prime Video. And also we're going to discuss that in a couple of weeks. These are similar stories, but they're being told in a fresh adult way that's completely different and a spin. And almost in The Boys case, it's a satire of what Marvel do. That is so fresh and new and a change from the formula that we're used to. That again, I don't feel like you can feel, if you're exposing yourself to this, if you're just staying a Marvel fan, yeah, you'd probably be pretty worried by this article. But if you're exposing yourself to all this stuff, you can just, even if the Marvels next week ends up a bit shit, it's not the end of the world, because you've still got all of this amazing content coming out to be passionate and exciting about. And all you can do then is kind of what me and Dan are probably doing. Even though, again, this means a lot to us. It's something that we're spending our Saturday night right now doing this. You know what I mean? Like, and we're not looking back. We're happy to do this with our Saturdays. But again, it's something where you can just take stuff like this and you can just go, give me that popcorn, and you can just watch. Because again, it's millionaires fighting about millions of dollars. Who cares? It's not the end of the world. If one movie or one TV show isn't great, it's not the end of the world. There's plenty more out there. Like Dan said, there's like stuff that's coming down the track in the pipeline, even newer, fresher content, and there always will be. And Marvel has kind of given that to us. So again, we'll always have a loyalty to it and want it to turn around. And I'm sure that there will be peaks and there will be valleys. And it's ironic that this comes out now while we're probably in a peak for Marvel this year, especially for recent times. Because Loki is a really good show. We're enjoying it.